where dreams collide. Sarah's voice, a gentle guide through the realms of time and space. She takes us to a sacred place.
How do we get rid of the stress, get rid of fear and worry? What do we do?
Part of the stress, fear, and worry comes from humanity's connection to its senses. So humanity has been locked within the framework of believing that there are five senses, when in fact there are hundreds, if not thousands, of senses that human beings are just not aware that they have the ability to tap into. And so the reality prison that exists around humanity is built within the very foundation of the way the nervous system interacts with the human being. And so for humanity, humanity needs to learn to go into a sense of calm, to be at the center while the world goes around it, which is a Taoist concept. The concept of standing in the middle of the wheel while the tire spins around you, while the spokes spin around you. That's how you find peace and balance, by not getting caught up in the manifestations or the machinations of emotional reactivity in the world. Because most of it stems from emotional reactivity. It comes from reaction. And so you have this large cosmic play taking place, which is reactive in nature as opposed to observational in nature. And what is asked of humanity is to stand in the center and just be the observer. One doesn't need to judge the observation. We're just asked to bear witness, because that is what souls are. Souls are individual points of awareness, bearing witness to the expression of God, seeking to understand God's self. And so if one can understand that life happens, there's always going to be things that can cause stress. There's always going to be things that can cause reactivity. But it's within one's own inner power to learn how to control that and not react, not be triggered, to just sit still and observe it. And when one does that, when one stops the flow of reactivity and just becomes present in awareness, the wheel of karma stops. And one is just left looking at the pieces of the machination as opposed to the motion of the machination. And by machination, I'm referring to the unfolding of creation. So human beings have been taught to get caught up into the drama of the show instead of being the witness and the one writing the script of the show.
Oh, so if we, instead of reacting, if we witness it, what happens if we, say something happens that's would normally be stressful, like a bill comes that hasn't been paid and they're shutting the water off or something. If we just observe it.
You then just work through what's presented itself without necessarily having to go into a negative emotionality. So you still have to deal with your situation, but you don't have to live in the stress of it. What is. What you're experiencing is what you're experiencing. So it's not to go into denial of it. but you just deal with it the way that you need to. You find a solution. You look at where you are and you look at where you need to be, and you start acting in the direction that solves that problem if it is solvable. And if it's not immediately solvable, then it is what it is. And so until it resolves itself, one is asked to allow it to be. And within that expression, you can ask, how did I get here? And you may look back and see that the path that took you to get there may have been irresponsibility on one's part. Oftentimes there's fear or there's stagnation involved in situations like that where you allowed yourself to end up in that situation. You didn't control your external reality effectively. And that's not to say that there's not situations that come out of the expression left field to affect and influence you. When they do, what's asked is just to be present with that and bear witness to it and then work through it. One doesn't have to go into chaos. One doesn't have to go into fear. One doesn't have to go into finality of what's taking place. It's just energy expressing itself, and sometimes that energy gets stuck. Sometimes that energy comes out skewed or unbalanced. And so through the act of observation, we can then find out what brings it back into balance, whether that's changing one's personal actions, the way that one lives one's life, or making the decision that this no longer works and one needs to go off in a different direction in their life so that this doesn't happen anymore. So it ends up being a catalyst for personal accountability within oneself. It ends up being the catalyst for one to actually take back their personal power and stop feeling like they are the victim.
Okay. I feel like when people have children, or at least me as a parent, just as an example, my mom